single dad hired a babysitter for his twin daughters, unaware she was the CEO's daughter in disguise. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It was a late afternoon in a quiet American suburb. The sunlight had softened into gold, stretching long shadows across the white fence of a modest two-story house. A faint melody of laughter came from the backyard, where two little girls with matching pigtails chased each other around a swing set. Their father, Daniel Carter, leaned against the porch railing, exhaustion hidden behind his kind smile. Life as a single dad had taught him to fix almost anything except the loneliness that came with the silence after bedtime. Inside the kitchen, the clock ticked toward 5 when a hesitant knock echoed through the door. Daniel wiped his hands on a towel and opened it. On the doorstep stood a young woman, slim, sun-kissed, her jeans clean but simple, and her eyes curious but guarded. "Hi," she said softly, clutching the strap of her canvas bag. "I am Ella. I am here for the babysitting position." "Oh," Daniel nodded, stepping aside. "Come in. The girls have been asking every 2 minutes when their new sitter is coming." As Ella entered, she took a quick glance around. The house smelled faintly of coffee and sawdust, a mix of home and hard work. Framed crayon drawings covered the fridge. It was far from the glass towers and marble halls she had grown up in, yet something about it felt right. No one here knew that Ella Carter was the only daughter of Margaret Carter, the CEO of Carter Group, one of the largest tech conglomerates in the country. But Ella had left that world behind 3 weeks ago, trading her designer heels for sneakers and a quiet plan. To live like an ordinary person, to find out if kindness could still exist outside money and fame. Daniel led her to the living room, where his twin daughters, Lily and June, both 6 years old, were sitting cross-legged on the carpet, coloring furiously. The girls looked up in unison. "Are you the babysitter?" June asked, her voice a tiny bell of excitement. "Yes," Ella smiled, kneeling beside them. "But I prefer the title of adventure supervisor." The girls giggled. Daniel watched the exchange with quiet surprise. For months, every sitter he had hired had quit within days, complaining that the twins were too loud, too curious, or too much. But this girl did not flinch. She joined their chaos like she belonged there. After dinner, while the twins brushed their teeth, Daniel found himself at the sink beside Ella, rinsing plates under warm water. "So," he asked casually, "you live around here?" "Not exactly," she said. "I am new to this part of town." Her tone was careful, and he noticed. But there was no arrogance in her, only warmth wrapped in mystery. When she smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkled slightly, the kind of smile that came from someone who had seen too much and still chose gentleness. The twins came running in their pajamas, one holding a drawing. "Look, we made this for you." Ella bent down. It was a picture of 4 stick figures, 2 small ones, one tall with messy hair, and one with long orange hair labeled Ella. Her throat tightened. She had been here less than 1 evening, yet these children had already drawn her into their family. When she left that night, Daniel walked her to the porch. The streetlights flickered on, painting the road in amber. "Thank you," he said simply. "The girls already love you." Ella smiled, pulling a small silver charm from her pocket, a twin bracelet she had made earlier that week. She slipped one onto her wrist and handed the other to him. "For them," she said. "Tell them it is a lucky charm for sisters who always stick together." Daniel looked at the bracelet, then at her. Something about this girl felt familiar, yet he could not place why. As Ella walked down the quiet street toward the bus stop, she glanced back at the glowing windows of the Carter home. The laughter of the twins echoed faintly through the air, blending with the hum of crickets. She smiled to herself, unaware that the simple job she had taken would soon unravel every secret she had tried to keep hidden. And inside that house, Daniel watched her disappear into the dusk, unaware that the new babysitter who had just stolen his daughter's hearts was the daughter of one of the most powerful women in America. The next morning came with the quiet hum of rain against the window. Daniel stood in the kitchen, tying his work boots while the coffee maker hissed behind him. The twins were still asleep, tangled in blankets, their stuffed animals scattered like tiny witnesses of dreams. For a brief moment, he just looked at them from the doorway, his entire world wrapped in two small bodies breathing softly. He had been doing this alone for almost 4 years. Since the accident, his life had turned into a rhythm of work, worry, and exhaustion. He worked at Carter Auto Repair, the small garage at the edge of town, where grease never left his hands and bills never stopped coming. Some nights he fell asleep at the table, the unpaid notices scattered like white ghosts across the surface. He never complained, but the weight showed in the slope of his shoulders and the quiet sighs that followed every long day. That morning, as he opened the door to leave, he found Ella already there. She was early, standing under the porch roof with a small paper bag in hand. Her hair was tied back messily, and her cheeks were pink from the cold. "Good morning," she said with that soft, calm tone. "I brought breakfast for the girls. I was not sure if they liked muffins or toast, so I got both." Daniel blinked, surprised. "You really do not have to do that." "I know," she said simply, "but I wanted to." He hesitated, then smiled. "You are going to spoil them." They deserve a little sweetness," she said, stepping inside. The smell of warm blueberries filled the kitchen as she unpacked the bag. It was such a small act, yet something about it pressed against Daniel's chest. It had been a long time since anyone had done something kind without expecting anything in return. Later that day, while Daniel was at the garage, Ella stayed with the twins. The rain stopped, leaving the world washed and quiet. She helped the girls build a cardboard castle out of cereal boxes and old shoelaces. They painted hearts and clouds, then sat on the floor, eating the leftover muffins. June looked up suddenly. "Miss Ella, do you have a family?" Ella paused, brush in hand. "Yes," she said after a moment, her voice softer now. "But it is complicated." Lily frowned. "Do they not miss you?" Ella smiled, but her eyes glistened. "Maybe they do. Maybe they just do not know how to show it." The girls went back to their painting, and Ella quietly exhaled. For the first time, she missed her mother, not the CEO everyone feared, but the woman who used to braid her hair before school. But she also remembered the cold dinners, the board meetings, the endless talk about legacy and power. That world felt like a prison wrapped in silk. By sunset, Daniel returned home, his jacket damp from the mist. The house smelled of crayons and toast. The twins were asleep on the couch, covered in a blanket. Ella was sitting at the table, reading a children's book aloud in a whisper so soft it almost blended with the rain outside. "You did all this today?" he asked quietly. She looked up, startled. "They wanted to build a castle. I just followed orders." He chuckled, walking closer. "You are something else, Ella. Most sitters last a few days. You already turned my living room into a fairy tale." She closed the book. "Maybe everyone needs a place to dream, even grown-ups." He stared at her for a long second, then nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Maybe you are right." After she left that night, Daniel lingered by the door, watching the faint glow of her umbrella disappear down the street. The silence that followed felt heavier than usual. Something about her stirred a feeling he had not allowed himself to feel in years' hope. Meanwhile, Ella walked through the quiet neighborhood, her sneakers brushing against puddles that mirrored the streetlights. She thought about the twins' laughter, Daniel's patience, the way this simple home had begun to feel like a shelter she did not deserve. But part of her heart whispered that she belonged here, that maybe, behind all her lies, she had finally found something real. She reached the corner bus stop and waited under the flickering lamp, clutching the small sketchbook she carried everywhere. Inside it, she had drawn the girls holding hands, with Daniel behind them, smiling. Beneath it, she had written one simple line: "Sometimes the richest hearts belong to those who have lost the most." The rain began again, light and steady, as Ella looked up at the dark clouds. She did not know it yet, but the life she was pretending to live was slowly becoming the life she truly wanted. The days that followed fell into a gentle rhythm. Morning light poured through the windows, and the smell of pancakes and coffee drifted through the kitchen. Ella had begun to blend into the rhythm of the Carter home like she had always belonged there. The twins would run to her as soon as they woke up, their laughter filling every corner of the small house. Daniel often came home late, his hands stained with oil, his face tired but his eyes calm. He would find Ella still awake, sketching quietly at the table while the twins slept. Each night, she would draw something she wanted to remember, a moment too precious to lose. The first one had been the twins playing in the rain. The second was Daniel fixing a toy car, his daughters sitting beside him like tiny apprentices. One evening, Daniel glanced at her sketchbook as he passed by. "You are an artist?" he asked, curiosity softening his voice. Ella hesitated, then nodded. "I like capturing small things," she said. "The moments people forget when they are busy surviving." He looked at her closely. "That is a beautiful way to see the world," she smiled faintly. "It is easier to love the world when you pay attention to the quiet parts." Daniel said nothing more, but her words stayed with him long after. On Sunday, he decided to surprise the twins. "We are going to the park," he announced at breakfast. "All four of us." The girls squealed with excitement, and Ella blinked in surprise. "Are you sure you want me there?" He grinned. "They would riot if you did not come." The park was alive with laughter, the air rich with the smell of cut grass and popcorn. Daniel helped the twins climb the jungle gym while Ella set up a picnic blanket nearby. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, turning everything gold. As the girls ran to feed the ducks, Daniel sat down beside her. For a while, they said nothing. The silence between them was not heavy anymore. It was comfortable, filled with something unspoken. "You are good with them," he said quietly. "I like being around people who still believe in magic," she replied. "It keeps me from forgetting." He turned to her, smiling. "You talk like someone who has seen too much." Ella's smile faded just a little. "Maybe I have." He did not press further, sensing her hesitation. When the twins grew tired, Ella helped them pack their things. She tucked their small hands into Daniel's and laughed as they protested about leaving. As they walked to the truck, Daniel glanced at her again. The late sun painted her face in soft amber. She looked peaceful, but there was something else there too, a shadow behind the light. That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Daniel stepped outside to the porch. He could see Ella sitting by the swing, sketchbook in hand. The air was cool, the scent of wet earth rising from the grass. "What are you drawing tonight?" he asked, leaning against the railing. "The twins," she said softly. "But I keep adding you by accident." He chuckled, a low, warm sound. "You can leave me out. The picture would look better without an old man like me." "You are not old," she said quickly. "Just steady." He looked at her, the porch light catching the gold in her hair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Inside the house, one of the girls called out in her sleep. Ella stood, instinctively moving toward the door. Daniel watched as she knelt beside the bed, brushing back a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. Her voice was a whisper, steady and gentle, the kind that could calm any storm. When she came back, Daniel was still there, hands in his pockets. "You are good with them," he said again. "They trust you." "They are easy to love," she said simply. He nodded. "So are you." The words slipped out before he could stop them. For a second, time seemed to still. Ella looked away, her heart pounding. "Do not say things like that," she murmured. "You do not know who I am." Daniel frowned. "Then tell me." But she only shook her head, clutching the sketchbook to her chest. "Maybe someday." He wanted to ask more, but something in her eyes told him to let it go. Later that night, after she left, Daniel found himself unable to sleep. He sat on the couch, staring at the bracelet she had given the twins. There was something about Ella, something too graceful for her simple clothes, too poised for a girl who claimed to have just arrived in town. Meanwhile, Ella sat in her small rented room across town. She opened her sketchbook, tracing the outline of Daniel's face on the page. The sound of the rain against the window filled the silence. She whispered to herself, "You deserve to know the truth, but not yet." "Oh." Then she turned the page and began a new drawing, two small hands holding a silver bracelet, the words beneath reading, "Family is not given, it is found." She smiled through the ache in her chest, unaware that her quiet sketch would soon become the seed of a truth that could change everything. The following week brought sunshine after days of rain. The world outside seemed to shimmer, but inside the Carter home, something even warmer was beginning to grow. The twins had started calling Ella Miss E, and Daniel found himself waiting for her laughter each evening, without realizing it. On Saturday morning, The girls' school was hosting a small festival. Daniel had not planned to go. Work at the garage had piled up, and events like these were hard for him. He never liked standing among couples, watching families complete while his own felt half missing. But when the twins begged him and Ella placed a gentle hand on his arm, he gave in. "Come with us," she said with that soft insistence that always disarmed him. They will remember this day for a long time. And so he went. The schoolyard was buzzing with music and the smell of popcorn. Booths lined the sidewalks, selling crafts and lemonade. The twins ran ahead, clutching each of Daniel's hands until they saw the cotton candy stand. Ella walked beside him, wearing a pale blue dress that fluttered in the breeze. She looked nothing like a stranger now. She looked like she belonged. They spent the morning playing games, painting faces, and laughing with the twins. For the first time in years, Daniel felt normal again, like a man who had not lost everything. When one of the teachers offered to take a photo of the four of them, Daniel hesitated, but Ella nudged him forward. "Come on," she said, smiling. "You cannot keep hiding from happiness." "Oh." He laughed quietly and stood behind her as the camera clicked. In that single frame, there was no pain, no loss, no secrets. Only a man, a woman, and two children, smiling beneath a golden sky. Later that afternoon, as they sat under a tree eating sandwiches, Daniel finally asked the question that had been sitting on his tongue for weeks. "Ella," he said, looking at her carefully, "what brought you here? You could have chosen any job, anywhere. Why this?" She paused, folding her hands. "Because I needed to start over," she said slowly. "I wanted to know what it felt like to live without being judged by my last name, to matter for who I am, not what I was born into." Her words made something inside him tighten, though he could not understand why. There was truth in her tone, but also something hidden, like a locked door behind her eyes. That night, when they returned home, the twins fell asleep in the truck before they even reached the driveway. Daniel carried them inside while Ella gathered their toys. When she closed the door, the quiet of the house wrapped around them. Daniel looked at her, still holding one of the girls' shoes. "You are good for them," he said softly. "You are good for me too." Ella's heart stuttered. "Daniel." But he only smiled, tired but peaceful. "I do not expect anything. I just wanted to say thank you for reminding us what joy feels like." She could not find her voice, so she nodded. When she left that night, she lingered at the door longer than usual. The moonlight spilled across the porch, and for the first time, she wondered if she could keep hiding forever. As she walked down the quiet street, she whispered to herself, "Maybe one more day." Behind her, Daniel watched through the window, unaware that the woman who had brought light back into his world was living under a truth big enough to shatter it. Monday morning began like any other. The twins rushed around the kitchen, their laughter bouncing off the walls while Daniel searched for his keys. Ella packed their lunchboxes, humming softly, pretending her chest did not feel heavy. She had been living this beautiful lie for weeks, and every day it grew harder to keep. That afternoon, Daniel was working under the hood of a car when his coworker, Mike, burst into the garage with a newspaper in hand. "You will not believe this," he said, pointing at the front page. "The missing daughter of Carter Group's CEO just showed up in the city. There is a photo." Daniel barely looked up until Mike slapped the paper on the bench. His heart stopped. The face staring back at him was Ella's, polished and perfect in an old photo, standing beside Margaret Carter herself. The headline read, "Carter heiress disappears, found living among ordinary citizens." Daniel froze, his hands trembling. A wave of disbelief and anger hit all at once. He left the garage without a word, the newspaper still crumpled in his fist. At the house, Ella was reading with the twins when the door opened. The smile on her face vanished the moment she saw his expression. "Daniel, what? Who are you?" His voice cut through the room like broken glass. "Is that even your name?" Ella stood, heart pounding. "Please, let me explain." He threw the paper on the table. "Explain what? That you lied to me? That you pretended to be someone else while living in my house?" Tears stung her eyes. "I did not mean to hurt you. I just wanted to live like everyone else, to be seen as a person, not a headline." "The girls adore you," he said, his voice breaking. "I trusted you. I care about them. I care about you," she whispered. But Daniel shook his head and stepped back. "You should go." The twins came running, confused by the raised voices. Ella knelt down, hugging them tightly, her tears falling into their hair. "I am so sorry, sweethearts. I did not want it to end like this." Then she left, her footsteps fading into the quiet evening. Daniel stood at the doorway, watching her disappear down the same road she had once walked in peace. Only this time, the silence she left behind was unbearable. Rain poured over the small town that night, washing the streets clean but leaving Daniel's mind clouded. He sat alone on the porch, the twins asleep upstairs, their tiny bracelets glinting under the lamplight. The newspaper lay on the table beside him, the words blurring every time he looked at them. Carter heiress found. He had replayed every memory, every laugh, every small act of kindness now, all tainted by the thought that it might have been pretend. Yet a part of him, stubborn and quiet, refused to believe she had faked everything. Across town, Ella sat in her childhood bedroom for the first time in years. The walls were white and sterile, the smell of expensive perfume thick in the air. Her mother stood near the window, arms crossed, expression cold. "You have embarrassed this family," Margaret said. "Do you understand what the press is saying? You disappeared for months to live like a common girl. What were you thinking?" Ella's voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "I was thinking that money does not buy love. I was thinking about what it feels like to be real." Her mother scoffed. "Real? You are a Carter. You do not get to be ordinary." "I am done pretending to be perfect," Ella said. "There are people out there who live with honesty, with kindness, people like Daniel." Margaret's expression hardened. "That man is beneath you." "No," Ella said quietly. "He is everything you taught me not to be, and that is exactly why I need to see him again." But she could not. The media had swarmed the house, and guards followed her everywhere. Days passed, heavy and silent. She watched news clips of Daniel's garage, reporters trying to find a story that was not theirs to tell. Meanwhile, Daniel tried to move on. He fixed cars, packed lunches, smiled for his daughters. But every time one of them laughed, he heard Ella's voice echoing behind it. One night, Lily crawled into his lap holding the sketchbook Ella had left behind. "Daddy," she whispered, "Miss E drew you." He opened it, and there they were, the four of them smiling in pencil lines. Beneath the drawing were the words, "Family is not given, it is found." Daniel closed the book slowly, his chest tightening. For the first time since she left, he let himself cry. Because deep down, he finally understood she had not lied to deceive him. She had lied to find herself. A week later, the world seemed louder than ever. Reporters camped outside the Carter mansion, cameras flashing each time Ella stepped near a window. She felt like a stranger in her own life, dressed again in silk and surrounded by people who spoke in polite tones but meant nothing. The girl who once laughed in Daniel's small kitchen now lived behind locked gates. Every night she replayed the last moment she saw him, his face pale with disbelief, the tremor in his voice when he said, "You should go." That memory haunted her far more than the headlines. Then one morning, her mother's assistant entered her room holding a folder. "Your mother asked me to deliver this," he said before leaving quickly. Ella opened it and froze. Inside were business documents detailing a corporate restructuring plan. Among the properties listed for liquidation was Carter Auto Repair, the very garage where Daniel worked. Her mother's signature gleamed at the bottom of the page. Ella stormed into the study, the papers trembling in her hands. "You cannot do this," she said. "That garage is not just a building. It is his life." Margaret looked up from her laptop, calm and indifferent. "It is business. Sentiment has no place in it." "You are punishing him because of me." "I am protecting our reputation," her mother replied. "You need to understand that emotions make you weak." Ella's eyes filled with tears. "Then I would rather be weak and human than powerful and hollow." She turned and walked out before her mother could respond. That evening, while the city lights glowed outside her window, she made a decision. She could not stay silent any longer. The next day, Ella called a press conference. Cameras crowded the marble hall of Carter Group headquarters, expecting a statement written by corporate lawyers. But when she stepped to the microphone, she carried no notes, only the same sketchbook she had once filled with drawings of Daniel and the twins. "Good afternoon," she began. "My name is Ella Carter. Many of you know me for my last name, but for the past few months, I learned what it means to live without it." The room fell silent. "I met a man and his 2 daughters who showed me that love is not measured in wealth, but in kindness, in patience, in the way you show up every single day, even when no one sees you. He taught me that family is not about bloodlines or legacy. It is about choice. She looked directly at the cameras. Carter Auto Repair will not be closed. In fact, it will receive a new grant under the Carter Foundation to continue serving the community, because people like Daniel Carter remind us that integrity still matters. Flashes went off like bursts of lightning, reporters shouting questions. But Ella stepped away, heart racing, tears threatening to fall. For the first time, she felt free. Across town, Daniel was in the garage when the news played on the small radio. He stopped mid-turn of a wrench, his breath catching as he heard her voice. The twins, coloring nearby, looked up. "Daddy," June said softly, "that is Miss E." Daniel could not move. For weeks, he had tried to bury every trace of her, yet here she was standing up for him, for truth, for everything she believed in. He turned off the radio, his pulse pounding. For the first time since she left, he smiled not because the past had vanished, but because maybe, just maybe, forgiveness still had a place in his heart. That evening, the news about Ella's public statement spread across the town like wildfire. People who once whispered rumors now spoke her name with admiration. But while the world talked, Daniel stayed quiet. He sat in the garage long after everyone had gone home, his tools untouched, his thoughts restless. The twins had fallen asleep in the office, curled up on an old couch, their small hands still clutching their sketchbook. He stared at the words written on the first page. "Family is not given, it is found." Ella had written that long before he ever learned who she truly was. Maybe that was what made it real. The next morning, Daniel woke before dawn. The air was cool, filled with the smell of rain-soaked asphalt. He made breakfast for the twins, packed their lunches, and then stood for a long moment by the window. "How about a drive, girls?" he asked softly. Hours later, in the city, Ella stood outside the Carter Foundation building, giving interviews, her voice steady but her eyes tired. When the crowd began to thin, she turned toward the quiet street where the sunlight broke through the clouds. A familiar old pickup truck pulled to the curb. Daniel stepped out, his jacket clean but worn, the twins holding each of his hands. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then June ran forward, calling out, "Miss E!" Her voice broke through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. Ella knelt down just as the girls threw their arms around her. Tears filled her eyes as she hugged them tightly. Daniel stood a few feet away, his voice rough. "They have not stopped talking about you," he said. Ella rose slowly, her eyes meeting his. "I never meant to lie," she said. "I just wanted to understand what it means to earn love, not inherit it." He looked at her for a long moment, searching her face for the truth. "And did you?" She nodded, her voice trembling. "I did. You and the girls showed me that." The wind stirred between them, carrying the faint laughter of the twins. Daniel exhaled, the tension in his chest finally easing. "You know," he said quietly, "you could have told me everything." "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that if you knew who I was, you would stop seeing me for who I am." He took a slow step closer. "I did stop, for a while. But watching what you did for us, for that garage made me remember who you really are. Not Ella Carter, the heiress, just Ella, the woman who believed in small things." Tears slid down her cheeks. "Do you forgive me?" Daniel's answer was simple. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 silver bracelets. "The girls wanted me to give you this," he said. "They said families should match." Ella looked at the bracelets, then at him, unable to hold back a trembling smile. The twins clapped, giggling, unaware of the weight their laughter carried. Daniel finally smiled too, a real one, the kind he had not worn in years. "Come on," he said softly. "Let us take you home." And as they walked together toward the truck, the late afternoon light wrapped around them, gentle and forgiving. Ella looked back once at the towering Carter building, then forward to the small hands she held. For the first time in her life, she knew exactly where she belonged. A full year later, the Cartertown garage had changed in ways Daniel could have never imagined. The small shop that once struggled to pay bills had grown into a thriving community space, renovated with funds from the Carter Foundation. The new sign outside read Carter and Carter Auto Repair, a quiet tribute to 2 worlds that had finally become one. Inside, the scent of coffee mixed with the familiar smell of engine oil. Daniel stood near the counter, helping Lily and June pack school supplies for the community drive Ella had organized. The girls were taller now, full of energy, their laughter echoing through the wide-open doors. When the last customer left, Daniel turned and saw Ella walking in from the sunlight, her white blouse speckled with dust from the construction site next door. She had been painting murals with the twins and a group of local kids. Her once perfect hair was now tied up carelessly, and her hands were streaked with color. "You still forget to wear gloves," Daniel said with a smile. She shrugged, grinning. "Some things are better felt than covered." He wiped his hands on a rag and crossed the room to her. "You never stop working." "You either," she teased. "But at least now we both work for something that matters." The twins ran up and tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, show her." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Show her what?" Lily pointed to the workbench where a small velvet box sat hidden under a pile of papers. Ella frowned, confused. Daniel picked it up and opened it slowly. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with tiny letters that read, "Small things that matter." Ella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I was going to wait," Daniel said softly, but the girls insisted. She looked at him, eyes wide with tears. "Daniel." He took her hand gently. "When you first came into our lives, I thought you were just helping with the twins. But you helped me too. You reminded me that love does not have to be perfect, it just has to be real." Tears shimmered down her cheeks. "You mean that?" He nodded. "With all my heart." The twins squealed, wrapping their arms around Ella's legs. She knelt to hug them, laughing through her tears. Then Daniel lowered to one knee, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Ella Carter," he said, "will you marry me?" The room went still, except for the sound of a distant train whistle. Ella pressed her trembling hand to her lips, then nodded, whispering, "Yes." The twins cheered so loudly that the neighbor's dog barked in reply. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, and the four of them stood together, wrapped in laughter and light. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance over the field. The twins leaned against Ella's shoulders, half asleep, their bracelets glinting in the soft light. Daniel reached over, taking her hand. "Do you ever miss your old life?" he asked quietly. She smiled. "Sometimes, but then I remember this is the life I was always looking for." The night settled around them, peaceful and whole, and as the stars appeared one by one above the Carter home, Ella whispered the words that had begun her journey, now made true at last. "Family is not given," she said softly. "It is found."